I am all over the map. I was recording and I wasn't even filming for the YouTube. Okay, let's try that one more time. Hello, 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 and welcome to the BFA Baby podcast. My name is Taylor Hartman, and today's episode will be a continuation of last week's episode, in which we talked about how my upbringing in a competition dance studio both helped and hurt my transition into my BFA. And today will be the part 2 to that episode, which is how my later years dancing and subsequent graduation from a ballet focused studio both helped and hurt me when going to get my BFA. So all exciting things part 2. We are rolling on camera, we are rolling on the audio. So let's get right into it. If you are brand new, I would highly suggest watching last week's episode. It gives a lot of great backstory to competition dance and how competition dance exists in my life, and how growing up in competition dance, like I said, both helped and hurt with my BFA degree. So there are a few things we touched on last week that will help with the conversation this week. And this isn't to say that, either style of training is inherently good or inherently bad. It is a very situational conversation, kind of like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's really studio to studio, dancer to dancer, person to person. Again, these are my personal experiences. I don't speak for the dancers, the companies, and the studios that I will be talking about today. I don't speak for them. I don't have any hard feelings. These are just my experiences and opinions on my training and how my training growing up impacted my BFA. Last thing before I go, I do acknowledge that training at this high of a level as a child and being able to go to college and get my BFA, especially as a woman, especially in the arts, I understand that there is a high level of privilege there. And I just wanted to say that if you're in a position of dance training and you want to make this your career, you want to go to college for it, there is a program out there that is right for you, regardless of what prior training you do or do not have. So that's my disclaimer. Oh, before we, let me sit up on the video. Here's the fit for today. We have this amazing Daisy Jones-esque bell sleeve top, and we have some red straight leg pants and some black heels on. I just got done filming some auditions for the spring main stages here on campus. We'll be doing Mr. Burns, a post-electric play. We'll be doing A Killer Party, which, fingers crossed, not trying to jinx it, but I would love, love, love to be in A Killer Party. And then, obviously, we're doing some plays, and then spring dance concert. But yeah, I just filmed my songs and monologues and stuff upstairs. And now we're filming this, so you get to see my beautiful made-up face. I think for the past couple episodes, I've been, we had adjudication, or I was filming an audition, and I've been, prettied up. We need to, I've got to stop doing these looking so good, because then, new viewers are just gonna expect that out of me. And, honestly, I be filming these sometimes looking like a rat. Have you seen the second episode of this podcast? If you're watching on YouTube, I look so disgusting the second episode, and it was so early in the morning when I was filming it, dude. It was crazy, but yeah, I gotta really lower the standards with these fits that I'm pulling out for the podcast. Before I started, I wanted to talk about a TikTok that I saw. Let me pull that up, and this is not what I actually want to talk about, but I wanted to shout it out on the podcast. So I am actually, I am on marathon TikTok, right? Okay. I am fully on, New York City marathon TikTok. And I don't know if it's just because, I like New York City. I don't know if it's because, I follow a lot of New York City content creators. I'm into, obviously, New York City content. I want to move there. I follow some, fitness accounts. So maybe that's where the running comes from. Anyways, so this guy, Andrew Murrane, Murrane. Oh, he has a podcast. Word. Anyways, so Andrew here, this is his, it's not going to focus, is it? Let me dim it down for the YouTube. This is his TikTok. It is at not Andrew Moraine. I'll put it in the show notes. He's a runner, right? Okay. And he literally ran the New York City Marathon stoned. And like I'm not out here condoning drug use or whatever, but like he ran this marathon stoned to like get rid of the stigma that like weed makes you lazy or something. And like, yeah, I'm watching the TikTok of like what he and like I just think that, I mean, like, dude, he went out and he did it and he had a statement and he did it, and I'm gonna have to argue that like that shit's performance art. Like, my man, it was performance art. Anyways, it was a good laugh, and I enjoyed it. And it was a good laugh. So shout out Andrew. Shout out for finishing and running the New York City Marathon, and not only running and finishing it, but doing it stoned. Shout out to you, because I could never run a marathon. So shout out Andrew. Would love to get you on the podcast. I don't know what you know about art, but would love to get you on the podcast just to talk about that, honestly, in like New York. But yeah, no, so he ran the New York City Marathon stoned, and I saw that on TikTok and thought it was pretty funny. And then I was watching the New York City Marathon, like, people were, like, live streaming it, and, you know, people were, like, you know, whatever, just, like, coverage of it, and we were watching the professional women's division, like, the morning it was happening, because we were up so early. I don't even know what I was up early I was, like, getting housework done before tech that day, because we're teching fall dance concert right now. I got stuff. Yeah, like, I was just getting, like, housework done because I was going to get back from tech late. So, I was up and I put it on, and I've, like, seen more professional footage on, like, TikTok and YouTube and stuff now. But the professional women's division, dude, there was, like, 7 or 8 of them. They were, like, hustling through this marathon. Like, fully just kicking insane amounts of ass. Like, the professional women were crazy. And like, listen, I love New York. I love working out. You will never catch me running a marathon. And like, my mom was a big runner when we were kids. I think she ran 1 full marathon and like 3 halves. So technically like 2.5 marathons if you like add it all together. But I remember she was a big runner when I was a kid, and she did a lot of like 5Ks as well. Like, there was, like, a cowbell 5K that she ran, and, like, every mile you got, like, cowbells rung at you. I think her and my twin did, like, one of those Thanksgiving, like, turkey trot things, like, in the morning. I think that her and my twin did one of those, like, when we were little. It was, like, with our elementary school, I think. Anyways, yeah, so my mom was a big runner growing up. Like, when I was growing up. And then New York City Marathon just happened. The Springfield Marathon was happening the same day as the New York City Marathon. And I was running errands, and I got stuck in all this marathon traffic. And all of this to say that branching out and doing all the fun things and, you know, try something new. But all of this to actually say that while I was sitting in marathon traffic in Springfield, I was writing my show notes for this episode. So, shout out marathons. That was a long-winded way of saying that I wrote these while parked on the road. I was not texting and driving. I was not show noting and driving. I was parked on the road while marathons ran on the crosswalk. So, go Bears. I hope the Springfield Marathon went well. I know for a fact that nobody listening to this ran the Springfield Marathon, but maybe you should. I don't fucking know. Maybe one of y'all did. Yeah, no, I am not a runner. I like being healthy, but I am a jogger at best. Sometimes I'll run if I'm feeling really strong, but like, I'm just not built like that for real. So I like a good incline walk, a good Pilates. Have Pilates later today. I've been doing a lot of like weightlifting. I've been doing a lot of like tricep work has been really beneficial. Tricep and quad work has been really beneficial for fall dance because when I'm in a tap piece, a lot of quad work for tap. And then our house piece with Brittany has so much like just physical like leverage on your arms of like all your body weight. So a lot of arms and a lot of quads recently. But yeah, move your body. Shout out your new favorite TikTok creator. Shout out Andrew. He was kind of an icon. Like I would honestly love to get him on the podcast. I just want to talk about the fact that he ran the New York City Marathon stoned. I think that is so funny. And honestly impressive, dude, because I don't think I could do that sober. I mean, I couldn't run a marathon ever, but like, you know what I mean. Anyways, so long little winded rant, but yeah, let's get right into the podcast. So I think a really interesting place to start would be a quick little recap of what's going on. So I danced at a competition-focused studio, very dance moms, comps every weekend, learning a whole bunch of new dances, from when I was like 5 to when I was like 11 or 12. And then at that point, I transferred over to the studio that I would then graduate from, which is like a very ballet-heavy studio. So I kind of want to talk about the dynamics of this studio because it was very, very, very ballet focused. This is where I got my first pair of point shoes. This is where I did Nutcracker for probably 5 or 6 Nutcrackers. And this isn't to say that we didn't train in other styles, because we did. You know, I'd had jazz and contemporary and tap, but it was always very ballet focused. You know, it was always very ballet focused. And the only time that we ever competed was, so in the winter we had Nutcracker, and then in the spring we had a spring production. And I'll talk about my first spring production in a bit, but yeah, and we would only compete spring production like once, just to get another set of eyes on it. It really wasn't, you know, I talked about in the last episode that my former studio would like kind of really set out to win, but then this one would, you know, we just kind of we just wanted to get other opinions on the choreography, on the staging, you know, what we can work on. And that was a really big shift, I think, for me, in which I and again talked about it in last week's episode. I came from such a place of like win or die, like win this competition or your head's on the platter next week, to just being like, let's just get a pair of eyes on the dance and just like see where we can grow. And that was such a life-changing, mind-altering moment for me. And I think that it's really telling now as I go into my BFA about, you know, because that is a pro that I take into my training now, especially like in auditions, or like if I'm getting feedback on something, you know, we're not doing it to win, we're doing it to grow and be better, you know. So that's kind of a pro outlook on that. But like last time, I will start with the cons, so we can end the whole podcast itself on a positive note. So some cons of growing up in a ballet-specific studio, they do kind of coincide with the cons I talked about last week, but I want to talk about dancer-on-dancer competition again, because it feels different than when you're at a competition studio. There was, you know, I really didn't feel it a lot till I got older in the company, but there was always there was always some unspoken competition, like dancer competition, and I think it just felt so much more intense because we never really had a metric to go off of, where like if you're at a competition studio, you know, you can see who gets the trophies and you can see who gets the ribbons. But when you're just in classes and stuff, like obviously you can see who's getting the roles, where they're being placed on stage, who's getting featured, like stuff like that. But like there really wasn't that like week to week. Sorry, I'm like uncomfortable in this chair, so I'm like moving around a bunch. There really wasn't that like week to week reflection on, like, who's doing what, who's doing well, who's winning, regardless of what winning means to you at that time. And so then I think the competition when you're at the ballet studio it's a lot more subtle. It's a lot more subtle and therefore a lot more. It's more psychological, I think, and it was at this time. I'm like yawning all over the podcast recently, but it's a lot more psychological, and it's at a time where a lot was changing for me, and I was really having my sights set on my BFA. I was having sights set on a professional career, and it was really hard to kind of get over that hill because people that I once saw as friends were now very tense with because we want similar things. You know what I mean? But I think that the in any art spaces there's gonna be a little bit of competition that you feel, and this isn't to say anything good or anything bad, but just kind of like a commentary on as women, as female presenting in the arts, I mean, like there's always that stigma, especially in ballet, of if you don't want to do it and you don't want to comply, there's 1,000 other girls that I can pick over you. And in ballet especially, and also as I grow into my musical theater training, also in all musical theater, women are a lot like cattle to these casting directors, and so that innate like fire to show up and to slay and to just really really make yourself less of a cattle to the casting directors. I think that competition, especially between women, will always be there until the industry as a whole shifts. And I mean, the industry as a whole isn't going to shift tomorrow. Like, it's just not. And I think we're kind of growing out of that just as a industry. I think we're kind of leaning into the what am I looking for? I'm talking about the competition. I think we're starting to see each other as more, we're partners, we're working together, just like people in the industry, and like this is kind of more of a well-rounded thing, but like I'm learning from that competition that I felt that it's only going to hurt your dancing if you feel like that, and if you start seeing your peers as your friends and as your future employees, castmates, whatever you want to call it, whatever you're doing, your dancing becomes better. And I think like the added psychological, like I'm no psychologist, like please, oh my god, I took a psychology gen ed my first semester of college and I just hated it, but so I'm no psychology major, but I feel like the psychological and mental toll of like feeling that you have to compete with everyone around you all the time, like it's not inviting and it's not beneficial, and your brain is so sidetracked on the competition that you feel with your peers that like your dancing is just gonna suffer. And I mean, like that was a big con that I felt, especially vying for roles for Nutcracker. That was a big one. But another con I wrote down is kind of similar to a lot of these, kind of crossover, but we talked about nepotism. And nepotism is apparent all over the entertainment industry, but just there's always going to be nepotism, and it's not going to change. And I can't be out here saying that like me talking about nepotism on the podcast is going to change. But it was a con. This one kind of has a double-edged sword because it was a con in which obviously, we were unfairly judged, unfairly looked at, unfairly cast due to some nepotism standards in the company. However, it's sort of a pro because it kind of warmed me up to the fact that like, oh, this is a thing that happens. This is what we're doing. This is what's going on. it did kind of warm me up in a small setting to nepotism, which isn't I mean, nepotism is not a good thing. I think that everyone should have to work and hone their craft and hone their talent in any setting, but especially in entertainment. But it did kind of set me up to realize, okay, this is something that obviously happens in the industry beyond just, dancing at a studio. But it kind of warmed me up, and it gave me time to sit back and really kind of think about it and be like, okay, yes, this is how I feel about this. This is how I'm going to handle it in the future. So that exposure to nepotism, I think, was kind of a pro and a con. Kind of double-edged sword. But I would say, like, the biggest con... There's a lot of pros. That's why my cons list is so much shorter. The biggest con in growing up in a ballet-only studio, not ballet only, but very ballet heavy, very ballet focused, is that the styles of the adjacent styles and genres that we were doing, our contemporaries and our jazzes, they kind of all stemmed from a similar place. Our contemporary stemmed from a very contemporary ballet place, and our jazz stemmed from a very contemporary jazz place. Not that any of this is bad. I again am very grateful for my training, but just as a commentary, I do wish that we were exposed to some broader ideas of what things could be. It wasn't until college that I realized contemporary could be so much, like so many different things. Growing up in competition and then graduating, I kind of had this idea of what contemporary was. It's the girl in the men's button down and black shorts under it, like running around the stage and being dramatic after, it's a heartbreak story. And not that I don't love those, please. I literally choreograph those. I love the heartbreak stories. But it wasn't until I got to college that I really saw so many different perspectives on styles that I thought I knew like the back of my hand. And I'm realizing that I don't. And I love that because I'm able to learn and I'm able to grow. And it's amazing. It's not even really a con, but like it's just more commentary on, where you grow up and where you come from. We were a small ballet company, we only had a handful of teachers, and they were all awesome. I seriously didn't have a teacher there that I didn't enjoy. I learned something from everybody there. But yeah, I feel like when you're at a smaller company, you kind of get those blinders that they put on racehorses so they don't like see the other racehorses. You kind of get some of those on, when it comes to your styles and your stylistic choices. And so I'm in this improv class right now at college, and I'm realizing that so much of the improv that I do stems from my training at the ballet company. And like, yeah, awesome, rock on, very happy about it. But I'm learning to now realize that improv doesn't just have to be throwing yourself around on the floor and being sad. You can improv jazz, you can improv tap, you can improv hip-hop if you wanted to. I do not want to because I would look like a fish, but even just times when we would improv in our contemporary classes back home, like, I'm looking back on like my improv growth over the semester, and I'm just like, I've grown so much, and there's so many things that I'm learning. And getting your BFA is just so pro of getting your BFA would be that you just have so much more exposure to so many new ideas because the population is bigger. You have teachers that came from all different places and all different ethnicities and all different backgrounds and cultures, and guest artists. And then not to say that university arts are funded well, because they are not. If you're not Juilliard, it's not awesome, but you have a little more funding than like a local studio would, and again, I'm no financial advisor. I'm not really the person to talk about accounting with, but there's more resources when you're in a college dance program. And I think the biggest thing for that is, like, you just have so many more outlooks, and then your personal dance vocabulary can grow and shift and change and adapt. And I think I even see that in my choreography. Like, I feel like a lot of the time when I was growing up, all my choreography looked the same. But now I'm like, I know I have different buckets to pick out of, you know, when I want to create a movement vocabulary for a new piece. You know, many episodes ago we talked about a piece that I'm doing in the spring called There'd Better Be a Mirror Ball. And when I was kind of creating the movement vocabulary for that, you know, I was really pulling from, yes, all of my classical ballet training, but I was also pulling from, like, new things that I'm learning here at school, and that was really rewarding for me because I was able to really realize that I'm growing, and being able to, like, see that growth is, like, really, really awesome, and I loved it. So yeah, I really enjoyed my time dancing. I mean, obviously, there's some things that I would go back and change if I could, but I mean, that's going to come with anything. I mean, not everything is going to be perfect, but I do think that there were a lot of pros growing up, and I am yawning all over this podcast. I'm so sorry. I think there are a lot of pros growing up and finishing my training, leading into my BFA at the ballet studio. I think that the correct path for me and my journey was to go from comp to ballet to BFA. You know, I don't know if I would have the same success that I'm having if it went the other way around. And I mean, you could say whatever you want to say about that, but yeah, I think that looking back, this is a really good path, and I'm happy that it happened this way because I am now able to see all of the pros and benefits that I got from it. You know, so starting off, biggest pro, I would say just the technique, you know. It's so obvious, but, like, the focus and, like, hone in on the technique at this ballet focus studio was so critical, and I think that really, really helped me out with my ability to then transfer it into other styles as I'm working towards my BFA, you know, in styles that I don't know anything about. Like, we're taking a Middle Eastern class, we had, like, a West African class, and, like, all these styles that I don't know anything about, that I have that foundational technique. So then, because that's really honed and sharpened, I can just kind of melt my way into the new genres, and I really, really like that. The technique was great, and also it allows me to, the technique has allowed me to be able, sort of like what I just talked about, it allows me to be able to focus on other things as I'm gaining so much new information and so many new styles and everything. Like the idea that, you know, I know that my hips are going to turn out, and I know that my feet are going to point, and I have all this muscle memory built up from so much work. And the idea that, you know, I that muscle memory from all the technique, I'm just all over the place today. That muscle memory from all that technique was really, really important, and I think that's one of my biggest takeaways from the ballet studio, is that my body just knows. And that will come with time, no matter where you're training, or if you're an adult ballet student, if you're training at home, if whatever, you know, and you will build that muscle memory and you will start to learn. And that is my biggest takeaway, is like that ballet technique muscle memory. And that's been crazy for me, and also crazy beneficial for me. And it's also really beneficial for me as a teacher, because I am able to promote that same thing for my students. You know, I always tell my little babies, I say, you know, we got to do the boring stuff before we can do the big flashy stuff. I'm thinking of a student in particular who, he's an absolute star and loves the big jumps and the big turns, but I'm like, dude, we got to do the pliés and the tendus and the dégagés beautifully and sharp and consistently, we have to do all of that consistently before we get to do all the flashy stuff. So, yeah. Muscle memory, great technique. I think that the muscle memory of just knowing where your body's going to go and trusting in your body, that's kind of another thing. Like, all of the technique training that I had gave me so much trust in my body, and trust in your body is also something that comes with time, and I think it's almost harder for it to come with time, because you also need to get, this is a very mind over matter thing, but you also need to get your brain to trust your body. You know, like your muscles, you trust your muscles that they know where they're going to go, but do you trust your bones to work with your muscles? Do you trust your skin to work with your bones? And that's very avant-garde of me. That's very hoo-hoo of me out there, like kind of out there in the world. But the idea that you trust your body and like bringing that into your mind, like you mentally 100% trust your body. And this is something I should have added in the performance episode. I was listening back and editing something out, like this really weird long pause that happened, and I was editing it, and I was realizing, because I was looking at it during a tech rehearsal, like a break, and I was thinking, you know, it's the trust in my body that I have has made me so much less anxious to go on stage, because I trust that my body knows it. I trust that my brain knows it. And that big, like, mind over matter jump, you know, like I can get my mind to be like, calm down, you got this, you'll slay it. You know, I think that mind over matter, and that comes with the fact that I can baseline trust my technique. And obviously that will come with time, that will come with practice, rehearsal, repetition, consistency. But that's one of the biggest pros I think that I can find from my graduation at the ballet studio. And yeah, I mean, it's made my life as a performer a lot healthier. It's made my mental health a lot better, you know, especially going into a ballet class. Because ballet is notoriously a mental health destroyer if you let it, if you're in the wrong environment. And you know, I think that I've been able to kind of restructure how I look at ballet. You know, when I was dancing and I was young and I was in high school, I had a really hard time with ballet for a while, because I kind of, you know, fell into that I don't look like the usual ballerina, and I want a career in this. How can I have a career in this if I don't look like the usual ballerina? You know, I'm muscular, and I'm not, you know, this big around. I'm not stick skinny. And I think like that conversation, like mental monologue conversation, that like really fucked with my perception, I would say, of ballet, because like I would just hate, like I would love dancing and love doing it, but I would hate to have to look at myself in the mirror all the time. And I think once I restructured the trust in my body and the trust in the way it looks, and the fact that the way my body looks doesn't fucking mean that I can or cannot dance well, you know, that was really important. And I think like that shift, like if I hadn't made that shift when I did, and obviously it's still something I struggle with, you know, it comes and goes, it comes in waves. Anyone who's struggled with a similar thing knows. But you know, if I didn't make that big shift when I did, I don't think that I would be as successful as I am now in my BFA. You know, ballet is notoriously, like I said, notoriously a mental health killer. And if you can learn to trust your body and your mind, and trust your body and your mind to not only know what's going on and know that it will carry you through your class, your performance, your rehearsal, but also trust your body and your mind to know that it's going to be okay, and that the world is actively changing around you. Great little segue to something else I wanted to shout out on the podcast. The WGA and SAG strikes are over. this is something I wanted to talk about on the podcast, but didn't think I had enough to say about it for a full episode, so I'm going to weasel that way in here as we talk about the industry changing. I am so thankful and grateful for the committees that were negotiating the Writers Guild of America and the Screen Actors Guild. You know, they're negotiating with the American Motion Picture Theatrical Association, and you know, they're fighting for fair rights and fair wages and living wages and rights to our art, rights to our likenesses, and rights to our careers as AI art becomes more of a thing. And I'm trying to get someone on the podcast so we can talk more about this. But not even just the people who negotiated, but all of the actors and the writers and the performers and all of the artists that are under the SAG umbrella, including dancers, you know, everyone that's under that SAG umbrella, that WGA umbrella, you know, everyone that struck and picketed and were fighting for the future of our arts. Like, it was just so beautiful to see. And I got the news notification about the strikes ending, and I was teaching a little baby ballet class at work, and I was like tearing up, and I just feel so free about it. And I'm just so thankful for the entertainers and the artists that continue to fight for the future of our industry. I like to think that I'm making a change, even with this silly little podcast. You know, if I help one person along the way, that's awesome. But the sacrifices that the performers and writers and entertainers made for the future of the industry, these past multiple months, it started this summer, you know, it's just, you can't compare it to anything. And I just wanted to shout them out on the podcast. As a writer, as a performer, you know, these guilds and these unions are critical to our safety and our ability to make a living off of the art that we do, and that we are paid handsomely and that we are paid well, because we are gifted people that have dedicated our lives to honing this craft. And the fact that, you know, the world will always be like this, but the richer are going to get richer, even though the rich CEOs at the top that are getting richer and richer and richer off of our starvation, you know, they can't do what we can. You know, and I think that this is a really great turning point for the future of the arts, as all performing arts, as there's a louder conversation about AI use, about companies being able to use an actor's likeness, a performer's work, a writer's work, with or without their consent. There's a big conversation about that, and these strikes were a really great catalyst for those. And I just wanted to shout out on the podcast, and we're talking about the ballet industry changing, so why not talk about the entire entertainment industry changing? It was all very, very important for me, and I just wanted to shout them out because they're doing the work, and they're sacrificing. And now that we're back to normal, we have a 3-year little contract going, and 3 years, in 3 years we're gonna fight harder. And we're going to fight some more, and I don't doubt that things are going to change in 3 years, you know what I mean? When we go back to the negotiating table, because the big and powerful want to get rid of the wages that we fought for, you know? Your 3-year contract's up, you know, we're going to come back and we're going to fight harder, and the new generations that age into the unions and age into the guilds, you know, that's what we're going to be doing. And if anyone that picketed, if anyone that negotiated is listening, like, my heart is forever yours, and the future of the arts is forever yours, and my immense, biggest gratitude out to you guys. So yeah, I just wanted to shout out the pickets, and that we are back to a place of normalcy. Is it perfect? No, but is it better? We're getting there. So yeah, just wanted to shout out the strikes, but we'll get back on topic now. So I would say another big pro that training at my ballet company helped me with getting my BFA was the ability to adapt on the fly. And we talked about learning choreography last week and like picking that up really fast, which is helpful. But you know, my junior year of high school, it was COVID times. You know, that's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. No one wants to hear about it anymore. But, you know, we had to adapt to how that performance looks like, you know, and the ever-changing rules in the theater. You know, we had to talk about all that. What that looked like for the audiences, what that looked like for the dancers, how that looks like for the directors, like everyone being healthy and safe. And that ability to adapt, especially during COVID times, and I think anyone that was actively dancing during COVID times kind of has this pro built into them now. Like, how do massive group rehearsals work, you know? Do we split up in studios? Are we in Zoom? What does mask look like? You know, this is like the initial quarantine type, you know? And that ability to adapt, and also my senior year, I was slated to do Snow and Lemon Drop Fairy at Nutcracker. And long story short, there was some injuries, there was a bunch of stuff that was kind of all happening, and I had to step back into the role of Sugar Plum Fairy, which I did my junior COVID year. And there's a video somewhere on my channel where I do like a Sugar Plum Fairy inspired hair and makeup and outfit, and we talk about the role, we talk about my preparation for it. If you're into Nutcracker or you're into hearing me talk, you're listening to the podcast, you've been here for 40 minutes, so I hope that you enjoy hearing me talk. But if you want to hear more in like detail about my Sugar Plum process, there is a video, and you can watch me do my makeup while I do it. So kind of like a 2-for-1 deal there. But yeah, so there is a moment where like a bunch of stuff was all happening and roles were getting moved around, and the TLDR of it is I had 2 weeks to get a role that I hadn't done in about a year back into shape. And that I felt a lot of pressure at that moment, but then I knew that this was my time to step up. Like, I knew that this was going to be the moment that sets me apart from my peers, and sets, again, that competition still kind of coming through, but sets me apart from my peers, sets me apart as you know, a leader and someone that can adapt. And I knew that adaptation and change is a major part of the industry. And I knew that it was going to be hard, but this was my time to fight. This was my time to make it happen. And so I did. I busted my ass, had all these extra rehearsals, and I was not only getting Sugar Plum back into my body and getting it stage ready, I was still helping out with Lemon Drop. You know, I was helping with the understudy that would then take over me, you know. We were having all these conversations about characterization and, you know, like flair to put in the piece and all these different things. And I was simultaneously helping lead Snow rehearsals, because I've done like a million Snows. Like, everyone's done like a million Snows. You know, I'm doing all these things, and then immediately had to switch and throw everything that I've been working on away to come back to something. And listen, I love Sugar Plum. I am so grateful that I got to do it for my senior year, because it was my dream role at the time. And then it was COVID, so I didn't get to have an audience for real, like in real life with us. But I'm very blessed and grateful that I got to do it my senior year. But there was a minute there where I was like freaking out, because I was like, dude, I haven't done this, like I'm not ready. But again, that trust that it's in your body, and obviously it took some work, but it came back, and I got some really great comments, some really great reviews on that performance. And I think the biggest thing for that is that, you know, like that was a great adaptation moment for me, and I was willing to adapt and change, and bringing that energy into my BFA, amazing. That has helped me so much, because things change so much all the time. Always things are changing. So yeah, that was a very pivotal moment. And the last pro that I'm going to talk about today is I want to talk about the idea of personality in the industry. You know, like kind of like with the nepotism comment, a pro would be that I learned that there are people who will do things and say things and anything they want to get what they want, whether it's right or whether it's wrong. And some people don't have a similar or fully formed moral compass like you and I may have. And sometimes the dream and the drive and the passion and the ambition clouds that compass. And I've learned growing up in graduating from the ballet company that people operate differently, you know? When the ambition and passion and drive clouds my brain, it clouds my ability to care for myself. You know, and that's a whole other podcast episode, but you know, whatever. But you can, growing up in the ballet company, I was able to see that some people operate differently, which sounds like really dumb, but like, no, people like operate differently. Like pressure and dream and ambition does things to people. And some people, instead of taking it out on themselves, take it out on other people. And being exposed to that type of personality, not that it's right or wrong, it's just how people handle stress, you know, but being exposed to that type of personality at like a very formative time in my career, very helpful to me, because now I'm able to be like, okay, and I'm kind of able to separate out, you know, are they doing this because they're under pressure, or is this an unhealthy relationship for me to be in? You know what I mean? Yeah, I would say that's the last pro that I think I want to end on, because it's just very important that any future BFAs that are watching, I want you to know that it is not right and is not right or wrong. It's just how, you know, your body processes. But there are going to be people that start acting different when crunch time starts to hit. You know, we're in tech right now. We are in tech right now, and you're getting hungry, you're tired, you're stressed, you're anxious to get on stage, but you're also nervous to get on stage, like anxious, excited, and like anxious, nervous. You know, and there's people that when they are in high stakes situations, especially when you're getting your BFA and it's about to be a career, and you know, when people get in high stakes situations, especially before a performance, people are going to start acting different, acting a little out of their heads, and it's not right or wrong. It is just, I mean, I do just want to comment that it is how your body is going to process it, but, you know, maybe it could be a good point of reflection for my future BFA babies. It could be a good point of reflection of, okay, if I find myself in a tense situation, how do I rein it all back in? You know, how do I react? And is my reaction hurting other people? Is my reaction hurting myself? Is it hurting my relationships? And I think that that's a really good point of reflection that I think I'm going to end on today. Kind of take this point of reflection, think about your training, and, you know, and I used to just completely shut down. Like, if I was nervous, if I was before a show, whatever, I would just shut down and, like, not talk to anyone. And I would be snappy, and I would be irritable, and I was kind of able to reflect and grow, and it's like, okay, that is not helping anyone. That is, I know that's your body's fight or flight, but, like, you're just making it more tense for everyone. It's not helpful. Let's, like, reflect on that. And obviously it's not an overnight change. A lot of things in the industry are not overnight, but you do want to kind of have that reflection and see, okay, what can I do to better my fight or flight response? Because performing isn't natural. You know what I mean? Like, what we do, nothing about what we do is natural. Nothing about how we move our bodies, how we toy with our emotions, how we get our jobs. Nothing, I mean, you could argue that no one knows how humans are supposed to be, but if we're talking about the traditional American adult lifestyle, and, like, everything about this is unnatural. You know, stage fright is a very common thing and a very natural thing, and, you know, having that, not, when I was a kid, we're going on a whole tangent here, but that's okay. When I was a kid, I remember, like, my mom's friends would always be so shocked that I was so scared to talk in a classroom, but I could get on stage at a competition in front of 500 people and dance and, like, love it. Like, the juxtaposition between having no stage fright, and obviously a lot of dancers are usually pretty timid kids, and we find dance as our expression, and the juxtaposition between that, it's not natural, it's not expected, it's not how things are supposedly, anticipated to go. And I think a comment on that is not to beat yourself up about how you're reacting under stress. It's not natural what we do. The stress that our bodies and minds and hearts are under, like emotional heart, I mean, obviously it's cardio, but like your emotional heart and feeling, like that stress is so unnatural. And that's why you hear about, like, I could do a whole episode on method acting, and I might have to, but you hear about method actors getting really sick or getting hurt or hospitalized or whatever, but like, that's a very far example, but you know what I mean. Like, it's so unnatural. So giving yourself grace to learn and grow and reflect, and giving yourself the space and the time that you need to do that is so important and so beneficial to the health of you as a performer, but also the growth of you in your BFA program, is that if that's the path that you go and choose. And I think that the biggest thing would be just giving yourself time to learn and grow, and don't apologize for learning and growing. And if relationships fall out because people don't, people think that you're learning and growing is selfish, that taking time for yourself is selfish, that protecting your inner peace and yourself is selfish, those are people that need to be cut out. To get a healthy rose bush, you have to trim the weeds and the thorns, So, give yourself grace, especially the jump from studio to BFA. It's a big jump for anyone, regardless if you come from comp or ballet world. It's a big jump. So give yourself grace to learn and reflect. And I hope that these podcasts are a great way to kind of tune into yourself and how you are feeling after hearing about my experiences. So yeah, just give yourself grace, reflect, and I hope you liked this 2-part episode. I'm gonna lead into an outro now. Like I literally just said, this was a 2-part episode. Last week's was about competition. This one was obviously about the pros and cons of growing up in ballet. Thank you so much for listening to the BFA Baby podcast. As always, the video version of the episodes go out on my YouTube on Tuesdays, and the audio version goes out on Spotify on Wednesdays. You can follow the podcast at BFA Baby Podcast on Instagram, and then on Instagram and YouTube, if you want to follow me or see the video version on YouTube, you can look up Tata's Ballet, periods between words. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm very excited to see where this podcast takes us, and thank you for being along on the journey. Merit and a kiss. Mwah.